Where's my phone? Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Need to lower it.
I don't understand how this makes it work, but.
There you go.
I don't understand how this captures it.
Can I do?
Yeah. We're live.
Yes, I know. There you go.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Agnieszka.
Let me see the light.
Is the connection okay?
Yeah, it says the one on the back.
Sorry, guys, we're starting a little late today.
We had a little incident. Somebody needed to go to the bathroom. And we have a new doggy, so he needed to go to the bathroom. So we couldn't start on time.
Yeah, we're constantly monitoring.
To try to understand when is the pee-pee and poopy time.
When is the time to get going?
You're looking for your phone, right?
Oh,
I have mine.
That doesn't help though.
Why not?
Because they're not.
But the questions tonight?
Yeah, you have it?
Yeah. Marco and Anishka, no? They put some of them and we have the other ones from there.
Okay, so this vlog is not going to be so topical how our vlogs normally are, and we're not gonna maybe show you so much stuff. Sorry guys, we're a little bit tired. Our doggy came yesterday, our new doggy, so we basically just didn't sleep at all last night because we didn't expect our new doggy to come yesterday. And we weren't prepared in any way to receive him. So we had to improvise a lot of stuff and just basically stay awake and take care of him. So it was a little bit... Anyway. So today what we want to talk about are some questions that have to do with different topics. So the first question that we want to talk about is an important one. And several people have asked us about this, but we kind of wanted to take some time to talk about it, make it be one of the last topics that we go in detail on, and that's power, because we talk about power a lot.
Power or energy?
Power, but energy power. But those things are difficult to talk about and easier to transmit through feelings. So
we'll talk about it by the end of it.
We'll talk about it.
It's hard to explain, but we'll do our best.
Yeah.
So the other thing we want to start talking about is
power. That's all. Start with power.
Oh, I thought that you were gonna leave that for last.
No.
Oh, that's what I understood.
No, I said we left it for last in our targeted topics.
Pero hay otras cosas ahí.
I know, but we keep on going with that.
Okay. We start with that. Okay, yeah. Very good. I understand now. Sorry,
we're like totally underslept.
Yes.
Like a lot.
So the idea of power is something hard to explain because it's something obviously that, yes, like Sara mentioned earlier, you have to feel it. But it's also something really hard to actually create sometimes.
Maybe we should talk about how the difference between energy and power. I think that's a useful distinction.
Okay.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I was about to go into that.
I know.
You know, we've been doing this for a long time, so I know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So energy is like making increasing the capacity in your body to, or creating the capacity in your body to move, or to be tense, or to be active, or to be ready. So it's making energy in your body is creating engagement in your body. And we use energy in our body in order to be able to move, and we use energy in our body in order to be able to transmit information. So energy making is really important, and being able to make different levels or different types of energy is also really important. And when this energy has to be transmitted to somebody else, then the word that we tend to use is power. So power is basically like applied energy that is applied, and not to the physical body of the other person, but as information, so that the other person can understand
and react the same way.
And react. Yeah. So that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, it's awesome because you cut me before.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what I wanted to say.
You forgot what you wanted to say?
Yeah, because you cut me off. So anyway, that's a little bit about energy and power. What I wanted to say, I have no idea. Blame her.
Okay, should I keep on talking? Because
yes,
I can keep on talking until you remember what you wanted to say.
Yes, yeah, just do.
So power for us is a different system of passing information that is complementary to and is used in a similar way, but in a more expanded way than access. So in our way of thinking about technique or about passing information or connection, the first and the simplest way of creating energy or creating power is access. So that we just do by articulating our ankles. So the little bit of ankle articulation, which moves the axis, is what creates the minimal power level to transmit information.
So what does that mean? That in the beginning, by you only moving your axis with your partner, the energy already of you moving your axis, or is already sufficient energy to be able to start thinking about the idea of leading and following, meaning you're creating some energy to be able to create some information.
Power.
Yes, eventually. I'm talking, don't change what I'm saying. Keep going.
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, so we're done with energy and power then.
No, that's just the beginning.
Very good, so continue.
Oh, okay. So that's the sort of the initial way that power is created. It's just through articulation. But in order to distinguish this articulation power from the other power, we don't really refer to articulation power as power. We refer to it by articulation or by creating energy by moving the axis. When we really start, also.
No.
Sorry, he's trying to chew the cables already, and he's 2 months old. I wonder what's going to happen in like 1 month more. I think we'll need like.
Go ahead.
Cow bones. When we say power, we mean energy which is created in addition to whatever the energy is that moves the axis alone.
So we create extra effort.
Awesome.
Extra effort. To don't have to necessarily move the axis as much. In the beginning, it's easier just to move your axis in the correct direction and the geometry so that your partner can understand. But eventually, you don't have to do that, and by applying more energy, like kind of compensating for how much you're going to move your axis, that's what we call power.
So power is making in your body the preparation, energy preparation, to move your axis X amount. So let's say that I want to only take a step. The preparation for that simple, easy-going step would just be the articulation of my ankle. I don't need a lot of preparation. But let's say that I need to make a very powerful, energetic leap, that I want to take a very big, energetic, powerful step. I need to make more power in my body, make more preparation in my body so that when I push off with my ankle, that I'm actually able to make that big step. The only difference is that a lot of the time, this energy preparation is not used to actually move the axis. This energy preparation is used to tell the other person that you need them to move their axis this much, whether or not you yourself end up using it that way. So whenever you're making power, that power level has to be more than what is enough for you. It has to be you plus whatever that other person requires to understand that their body has to make the same energy level. And this is always different. So with each person, your dancing preparation, your power preparation is going to be different.
So to be more specific on how you create power, is almost I like to think about the idea of like I need to use my muscles, yes, and almost to create some contraction, but almost like I'm trying to go on opposite directions. I don't know if that makes sense. Is I'm trying to create opposition in my body. So imagine I'm trying to move forward, and at the same time I'm resisting because I want to move back. That already is an opposition, and if I start putting more energy into it, so imagine I'm trying to move my hand forward, but at the same time I want to move it backwards. So I'm trying to move it forward, and then I resist because I'm trying to move it backwards. By consequence, that's kind of staying on the same place. But for me to be able to do that, imagine you're still resisting because you really want to go forward, but your hand wants to go backwards, let's say. And by creating more energy, because you're really trying to go forward, you're creating so much energy that your hand is almost like shaking, or your body, I mean, it won't shake, but your muscles are like accumulating more energy, more potential energy to be able to gather that and then eventually move or create the leap. So it's literally, it feels like an opposition. You're trying to always resist yourself on the direction that you're trying to go. That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, so this is really interesting because everything in movement is integrated. And this is also why I don't like the word of dissociation, because nothing is disassociated in the movement. Our bodies have to be integrated and coordinated. And the more integrated, more coordinated we are, the better our movement is. So what's really interesting is this gathering of energy to create power for lead is actually very similar to just creating balance.
Mm-hmm.
It's just taking to a different energy level. For mere balance, I only need to have an equality of forces. So actually to stand on one leg in very good balance, that equality of forces can be very slight, and my tension level doesn't have to be high. It can be like very, very light, but it has to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
When we're creating power, we start to play with this sensation. And actually, in order to create power, you need to generate, first of all, this sensation of balance, of equality of forces. But then, in order to push this power, in order to push this energy, to have it give a direction, then you're actually resisting more or pressing more, depending on which direction you're wanting to create. So without this initial sensation of the body, of balance, of equality of forces, making power becomes very difficult, because if you only make power in one place, you make a lot of tension, but that tension doesn't have a direction, then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're very heavy, very hard, but no one feels anything because it's not directed anywhere. So the problem with power is that you don't have the luxury of access. If you use power and access, it would be too much. The movement would be too big, it would be too energetic. So in order to create power, you actually have very little axis movement. But for a lot of people, when they stop moving their axis, they stop having a direction. And that creates a big problem. So for these things that I know you guys like us to talk about them, but we can talk about them verbally, but it's hard to understand what we're talking about until you actually feel it. And that's what's so amazing, is that these technical things, they're intellectual things because we've analyzed them, but we haven't come to them through an intellectual practice.
Right.
We came to these understandings because we had sensations, and then we were exploring the sensations and learning about them, and then we intellectualized them to develop principles. But then we went back into the feeling. So without the feeling, it's very difficult to dance. If you only think, you don't necessarily move, and if you don't feel, you can't lead and you can't follow. So this is why tango for me is so amazing, so challenging, and so beautiful, because it involves all of my faculties. I have to feel, I have to think, I have to trust. It's kind of it's very challenging to do all those things at the same time.
So yes, just think about it like that. It's fuerzas encontradas.
I don't know what that means.
Like encontradas cuando están como en contras.
Encontrar means found. No?
No necesariamente.
Okay.
Pero energies, opposite energies.
But which are at the same time together energies.
Together's energy, which is equal, the same energy. And then you just put a lot of energy into that, and that's creating potential power.
Is it?
For me, yes. Sarah, you cannot make the face that you just make, like saying, like, what are you talking about?
Because I'm trying to understand what you're talking about.
But you were
You're making like this little fingers.
I know, but you were talking about earlier, and you keep talking and talking and talking. And for me, I didn't understand anything that you're saying. But I'm not making any faces in front of people.
You can. You should make faces.
No,
at
you
me.
cannot. You cannot. Okay, so every time you say something that I think is ridiculous, I will make a face.
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's cute how you're saying it. Oh, he's going somewhere. Sorry. We have to still keep an eye on the doggy. So if Ivan gets up, or if I get up, it's just we're trying to house train him. He's 2 months old. Right on time. Okay, so Ivan is gonna have to go for a little bit. So yeah, so that's kind of. Sorry, now you only get me for a little bit, but he'll be back soon. So that's kind of the question about power. It's a fascinating thing, but it's a feeling thing. So all of you guys who are interested, I hope we get a chance to maybe meet in person one of these days when all of this quarantining is over and we can meet more than 10 people to actually experience it, because having the sensation of it, it's like there was one student we had who said, my God, this feels like I have an alien leg. Like it's my leg, but it's really not my leg, because it feels like there's this connection that makes your body move, and you're conscious that it's moving where you don't understand how a movement happened. Like a movement happens, but you don't understand how or where it comes from. And that's kind of what's cool about power, is that for the followers, it's almost unnecessary to understand any complex things, because the path of the energy, the path of the power, as created by the leader, makes the whole movement happen. And of course, if the follower knows what's going on, the experience is all that much richer. Unfortunately, all of these feeling things, they are things of awareness. So if for example, I think that my partner is leading me, or that he's creating information for me through his embrace, and my attention is on the embrace, I will miss most of the information that he's giving me, because this is only one segment that's going on here. But most of the information is happening in his energy, like his body work towards the ground. And if I don't have like a scanner in me that's basically constantly measuring how much he's moving in his axis and how much power he's making in his body, and if I don't know where to pay attention to that, then I can be dancing with a really great leader who is doing all of these techniques naturally, inherently, because they are there in our natural movement. But because I don't know that they're there, and I don't know what to follow, and I'm because I was told I should follow the upper body, I'm actually not following anything. And so this can be a little bit of a problem. um, because when you follow that way, that you are following a particular thing, um, then the and this is actually a problem all the time in following and leading, is that sometimes we have a personal experience about dancing with somebody, but they don't have that same experience. Like you're dancing with a leader, and you're like, oh my god, that was so amazing, it was so connected, we danced so well together, and then the leader's like, wow, I had to follow her the whole time. She wasn't following me at all. There was no communication there. It was basically her anticipating and me trying to cover up the errors, or the other way around, where the leader is like, oh my god, this follower is like, she, I just think, and she appears in the space. It's so amazing. And for the follower, it's like, wow, like, I felt like he wasn't actually giving me any um, real precise information, and all I had to do is just constantly try to move around him, guessing where he's going to go next. So um, it's difficult to simultaneously pay attention to access and power, but most good dancers use both access and power, and they use them simultaneously, and they blend them. So if you think that like moving the axis is the beginning of energy work, which is kind of like on this side of the spectrum, and that's just the articulation of the ankle, and then you have all of this very like strong oppositional energy created in the body that has only small within axis movement on the other side, and you make a spectrum between it. Different types of movements are created by articulation of the ankle versus the very powerful energy inside of the axis movement. So the spectrum of the possibilities of dance are made that way. And I think we talked about that in our first video on walking. So if you guys want, maybe you can just review that video, because we actually showed some of the distinctions between projection and axis. And those are essentially the distinctions between projection and power.
Yes.
Between axis and power.
Axis and power. Yeah. What are you talking about? What did you say?
What?
What was that you said? You see? I don't do that. Really. Anyway. Sorry, guys. He needed to go. That was number 2.
It was successful.
It was number 2.
Very good.
Number 1, easy to deal in the house. Number 2.
No, anything in the house.
Yeah, of course. But at least I can deal with number 1.
Okay. So I talked a little bit about like how the embrace.
I was listening. Go ahead.
About the embrace, and how like if you pay attention, like why power is important, to know it and to have awareness of it, because if you don't have awareness, then you're missing a lot of information. Yeah. So I think that's it on power and access. I don't know, those of you guys who are there, if you have another question about this, ask us.
Dice aquí cuánta gente está conectada.
No idea. Doesn't matter. There was another question on. No. Please don't press anything. Yeah. So the other question there was another question about spirals, even in linear movements, and how it creates a delay between the leaders lead and the followers follow. So there are small spirals even in linear movements, in the sense that you have one leg forward, one leg back, and you will always have naturally a slight counterbalance to that in the upper body.
Yeah, naturally, everybody when they walk without really knowing, I mean, nobody really just walk like with the upper body and just nothing moves. There is a slightly gentle movement that is going against your legs, right? Of course, sometimes in tango, what we do, we emphasize that more. You don't have to, but you just need to be aware.
Yeah, what's kind of cool about that contra body actually is that you don't need to show it. It happens internally. and it's something that you can feel. So if you emphasize the connection in your body, like if you really use your core and you use like your whole body to sort of make your legs move from the inside, you start to feel that spiral even when you're walking in a linear movement. Um, but sometimes people want you to counterbalance visually, and I don't think that's necessary at all because the internal work is what's important. So long as it's happening inside, it's not necessary. Plus, it's a little bit strange because if we have this counter body movement in linear steps, it looks actually kind of like unstable. And then if we take this idea to, let's say, outside partner walking, which isn't linear anymore, but we maintain this cross body walking,
it wouldn't work.
It doesn't work because then we lose this.
So imagine you have your partner here, and I'm rotated to here, and imagine when I'm walking outside partner, and then I have to do this, but your partner is not really moving from one side to the other side of the embrace. She's actually staying there. So how do I do this while your partner is there? It wouldn't work. So the spiral stays on one side and the other leg. So the idea of changing is some people I know they do it in the walk because it's something visual, something that they might like.
It looks kind of like more elastic or more
like you dancing more, but it's not necessary visually to do it from the outside unless you're doing it internally. Internally is more important. So that still is happening so you can feel it, but you don't have to necessarily try to make it bigger from the outside unless you're performing or you want something in particular to show, etc., etc.
Yeah, I mean, that spiral sensation in a linear walk inside is what helps your partner feel that you have two legs.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do it too flat, two dimensional, that feeling is not as strong. But if that sensation inside is more rotated, then it's easier for both people to feel the whole body of the other person, and especially the two legs, because that's essentially what we're looking for.
It literally make you feel the beginning of the step, whatever happens in between the step, right? Whenever you're about to bring your legs together to keep passing, right? So that sensation of the rotation is kind of helping to bring the leg, but it's a sensation. If you do it visually from like I'm doing it, but internally it's not working, it might look like something is happening, but it's not really, nothing really actually happening if it doesn't happen internal.
So Marco mentioned, I remember feeling counter body movement in a linear walk once with you, Sarah, and would swear that you were actually moving. Then you showed me that you were not. That was so cool. Yeah, and I hope that what it helped is to feel that the two legs, Marco. I mean, I hope that was the result, because that's the reason why you would want to amplify that sort of spiralness of counter body is to emphasize that there are two legs and present both of your legs to your partner, like understanding where they are.
I mean, if we think about it, like when we were talking about energy before and all of that, when imagine this is the, let me use this as the body. So this is the body, and we create an opposition, let's say going down and going up. This is already an opposition, up and down. Now imagine, let's say this thing is moving forward, and at the same time, like I was showing with the fingers that Sara was making fun of me, they're going forward. I'm also trying to stay back, right? So I'm pushing forward and pushing back. So I have both opposition here, forward, back, down and up. Now imagine on that, this is again linear. Imagine on that if internally, or eventually when we go outside partner, or when we turn, I make this, I cannot do it with the phone because it's really hard, but I make the rotation. Do we have anything that helps me?
No. Maybe my jacket?
Oh, I have something better. Here. So yes, we're not that flat, but this helps. So imagine we have all the energies, down, up, forward and back, and now on top of it, on top of those directions, I'm gonna have this. Let me do it right.
Yeah.
It's hard with this one. That's the spiral part. This.
Yeah.
So imagine this potential energy that I'm creating just by doing this rotation. Imagine if I do it more internally and it still is there. So they help us to be able to create stability, but more than anything, it helps us to create even more energy. That's why for some people, they like to think that when they pivot, they do the upper body and then the hips unwind. But think about it like you want both things to go opposite, that you don't have to necessarily have to pivot from here. You can just walk with this if you're going outside partner, or you can turn by yourself, or you can do many things. The idea is that this idea also that is in opposition, you're trying to go in this direction, but you're trying to stay on the opposite direction, is also creating energy, and by consequence, you're creating more power.
Yeah, I mean, this is why it's easier to be. A lot of people have problems in spiral positions when they're not in linear positions, but actually, spiral positions are more forgiving, because if you're just using your body, you will have more energy, you will have more opposition by default, just because you're rotated. But in lines, like the feeling for linear, and this is going to be a little bit weird, but the way that you can kind of feel that sensation is how you can like wrap your leg. Like imagine that you want to, like you're standing on both feet and you want to turn out both legs.
Mm-hmm.
But then instead of turning them out, you just engage those muscles, but you don't turn out.
Yeah.
So those muscles at the top of your hips, like at your booty, they are the ones that are rotating.
So either doing this, that you turn out, or now trying to just
engage them.
Okay? Engage to have that sensation of,
yeah,
it looks like
yeah.
Superman.
So in that feeling of like the wrapping that actually doesn't result in a rotation, I imagine that happens all the way up through your core. So it's like engaging all the way up through, and when you're walking, that feeling of stretching this engagement is high. This is why some people talk about the walk starting in your ribs, and sometimes it's misinterpreted and people start to walk from their spines.
Ouch.
But the idea of walking from your ribs comes from the idea of engaging your psoas muscle, but your skeleton should still be like how it should be, not moving. Yeah, so your muscles work through your skeleton.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's about spirals and lines. Let's see what other question we have. Sorry guys, we're a little disorganized today, but it is what it is.
Part of us.
That's how we are.
Well, not really.
Today. So there's a question about, we have maybe like 15 more minutes, so we'll talk really fast. This is the question that I want to talk about, which is about quality dancing. What does quality dancing mean to you? What do you look for? What do you aim for? I'll let Ivan answer that.
One more. Will you guys say that leading from the floor uses exactly the same principles as moving from the floor, but there is something extra, something different?
Do you want to answer that?
Explícalo a ver si
okay,
entiendo lo mismo
so
que vos.
I'll start and then Ivan will
jump
on it. So before we go into the quality movement, Predrag's question is, would you guys say that leading from the floor uses exactly the same principles as moving from the floor, or there is something extra, something different? So the only difference between moving from the floor and leading from the floor is that when you move yourself, generally you create the direction which you require. So if I'm going to walk in a forward step, I walk in a forward step. If I'm going to curve, I curve. But it's like always a sort of an individual line.
Or
individual path. The difference between leading and moving yourself is that when you're leading, you never create, or almost never, I would say, very few times, almost never, you create a single path for you and your partner. Most of tango for the leader is creating separate paths for his partner and for himself. And this is what's tricky, because you have to have really good axis control and power control, because essentially you're from the initial part of your movement, you're generating the path of your partner. And then from the second part, let's say second part of your movement, you are generating the path for yourself. So sometimes these paths overlap or they are parallel to each other. So sometimes you initiate her direction maybe this way, and then you accompany her in that. But sometimes those paths are completely opposite. So you will generate this for her, and your path is going to go this way. So you're going literally across of what you've created for her. But the principle of it is the same. So it's almost, for the leading, it's almost like you're moving for two people simultaneously.
I don't know why Sara took the idea of the path. I understand what you mean, but I will go for something different, which will take us to the idea of what we were talking about. What we were talking about energy. The last thing that Sara said, that will be what I wanted to say in a way. But the difference when you are, let's say, move from the floor and then what we lead from the floor is that eventually this for me was the biggest problem with tango, because I used to dance other things. They didn't require me to have a partner so close to me, and whatever, every time that I breathed, she felt that I was breathing. So if I wasn't doing it right, it will cause a problem in the partner. So the sensation of freedom that I used to have in other dances, because I was dancing by myself, right? Even if I dance salsa or whatever, you're kind of dancing by yourself. Compared to tango, it feels like you're dancing by yourself, on the sense that your movement, it doesn't really interfere with the other part, with the other person. So the idea of freedom for me in the beginning was really hard with tango, because I felt like I have to do something extra to lead. And this is where I'm trying to go into it. Eventually, when your movement is correct, on the sense that there is sufficient energy for yourself, right? But also that you're aware that you're dancing with somebody else, the only thing really different that you do is that you apply, like what the last thing that Sara said, you apply energy for two people, because you're the one leading. And it's not because your energy is have to move her, just because you're telling her that I need you, that you engage more your body. Let's say in this case there is a pivot, you need to create more energy follower to move in this direction. Even though, let's say I'm only doing a side step, let's say we're doing ochos, and I don't really need for a side step such a strong energy to lead her. I could just take a normal step, but that would be me moving from the floor myself. But me leading from the floor, it means that I have to apply more energy, because I know, I'm aware of her. I know that she needs to apply more energy to create that pivot. And I'm going to make her pivot, but I'm going to tell her, apply more energy in this moment and move myself on this direction.
In addition to telling her that her direction is X and his direction is Y.
Yes, which that eventually takes you to what Sara was saying before about the path. The path is literally from the beginning of where her foot is standing all the way wherever she's going to go. And that sometimes in the beginning, yes, the path, it might be similar and the same, what you take and what she takes. So sometimes, let's say on that, you don't need to put as much energy. But when things start to be a little more complex, sometimes you don't even take the same path that she's taking. Like, for example, you're trying to walk outside partner. You're in front of each other, and you're taking a forward step, she's taking a back step, and you need to walk outside partner. On that moment, you started together, but you end up finishing outside. So for that already, you cannot think just about yourself in terms of you're only moving from the floor. If you know, you have to create that extra energy for her to keep going on that direction. And then, yes, by yourself, you can use your own movement to move to the side of it.
So what he's talking about is that initial side step or initial entry into the outside partner position. meaning that the leader is walking forward, he's stepping outside, let's say to the left. He still needs to have the follower move relatively linear, even as he takes a more diagonal forward step. So it's a diagonal, it's a side forward step for him.
Yeah.
And this is a simple, it seems like a simple thing, but it's actually very difficult. So this concept of creating two different angles for the leader and the follower, we see all the time. We see it in the cross. We see it in sacadas. We see it like pretty much we're constantly doing it. And it's really difficult to do correctly.
And that's the hardest thing. It's like, it's still, on the end, it's like the coolest thing about this is that eventually, if you move correctly in your body, with the correct geometry in relationship to your partner, and on top of it, you know how much energy your partner requires on that moment, then it literally feels that you're moving by yourself, just paying attention with somebody else, right? Applying a little more energy whenever she needed. And likely enough, there's a lot of movements that it will require you to put more energy because you need it, and that will be already sufficient energy for
at the same time.
And that will be sufficient energy for her to be able to do the same thing. So on the end, I always say this: your movement is your lead if you're paying attention to her. If not, you're moving by yourself. Yes?
Yeah.
I hope we answered that one.
Yeah. But I mean, for the leader, it's hard because he has to know what she needs to do and how much energy she requires. He needs to know what he wants to do and how much energy it requires for him.
And better people, we have to do more work.
That's not even funny. Not funny. Yeah. And so he has to, like, it's hard because he has to give the energy level that the follower needs. It's like pretty crazy idea.
Yes.
That in your own body you're making a preparation for your partner, which you're not yourself taking.
Right.
Right? It seems like weird, but it totally makes sense.
And sometimes it's the same, but a lot of the times it's not the same.
So it's kind of cool because it's like that, and that's what creates that super connection.
Right. And the idea of thinking like you have 4 legs, because imagine you are somehow, you're moving your legs with a particular energy, but then you're applying a little bit extra to tell those other 2 legs to do a harder task than what's necessary for you.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's like having selective power steering or power drive on the wheels.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you want one set of wheels to have more power, and sometimes you want another set of wheels to have more power. And actually, it kind of ends up being like that because there are movements sometimes that he needs more energy, but he shouldn't pass it to me.
Right.
Because he doesn't want me to take the same energy level as him.
Right.
So he has to be able to tell me, Sarah, go level 3, and he himself is going in level 8. That's super cool. I love it. But then Ivan is like amazing. Yeah.
See, before she was like, now this is how she compensates.
No, I'm being honest. When I go, like, what are you talking about? I'm being honest. When I say you're amazing, I'm being honest.
I know, but many people work this way. We're now working with this idea. What we explaining.
I know that's how people lead because that's what I'm following.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that what makes it amazing is when you're really aware of it and you're in control of it. Then you can manipulate it.
Yeah, that's the fun part.
Even more.
Yes. And this is also what helps you eventually to imagine like every follower. This is of course also as a leader.
And every leader.
We're all different in terms of how much energy we put. We have different, sometimes even some ideas of how technique is and all of that, and where let's say the energy comes from and all of that. So imagine like if I feel that the follower, it doesn't put enough energy for her pivot, right? So then I can always compensate, and that extra energy that I'm been using, okay, I will have to use a little bit more, so then she understands that she have to put more energy. So eventually, all that we're doing, we're trying to balance each other with energy, right? So this person dances with this high energy, right? And let's say my energy is more calm. Well, somehow we both have to try to find each other
contact points
somewhere. When you feel disconnected, it's because somebody's vibrating crazy here, and the other one is like chilling, right? Somebody's dancing at Disarli, and the other one wants to dance at Arienzo. Like it doesn't match. So at some point, somehow we meet, and those are the moments that you're like, oh, magic! I felt connected. Yeah, that's the moment that you are actually putting the same amount of energy, and everything is moving together. However speed, whatever is happening. But sometimes it goes a little bit out of whack. So imagine if you can control this by knowing how much energy the other person is putting, and this comes from both sides. Though all that you start doing is to try to level the energy. Okay, she's putting too much, let me put a little more. She's putting too little here, or he's, or she's.
And the follower is doing the same thing.
So you're constantly doing this all the time to try to find that. And this is why you have to be so attentive to the other one to be able to have that. When people call about the connection, is not the connection spiritually to some other planet or whatever.
I mean, it can be.
It can be eventually.
So much, it becomes like a meditation, right? I mean, because this connection requires a lot of concentration, a lot of attention.
But we like to think about it from the more physical part of it, is that you have to pay attention to the other person because it's a lot of things that you need to do. And to be able to match the energy, you need to try to feel it. That's why followers sometimes they close their eyes to try to understand better. And it just helps you to try to kind of like, I wouldn't recommend you, Marco. I know that you close your eyes once. You're the leader, so don't close your eyes. Unless some moments that you stop, yes, you feel it, okay, I feel connected, and then you keep going. But imagine, I mean, it's a crazy ability that we all do in Entangle. We're just trying to match each other's energy so be able to find the
beautiful
vibration or that energy that we're moving.
Connection.
And that creates the connection. Pretty crazy. Yeah?
Yeah, okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is quality dancing. What does it mean to you? Ivan has strong views on this, so.
Quality dancing is many things. Let's say, let me go for the external thing. You can see it, and then we can go from the internal thing that you can feel it, right? So externally is let's say for some people it could be a question of taste, but not really. It's like, for example, in dancing, you cannot, in general, let's say, you cannot, let's say, have your feet turning, right? Having your feet, like my camera is not capturing, there you go, turning is not efficient for your body. So efficiency, eventually it doesn't help you to be able to be, let's say, more continuous, have more speed, be more connected, etc. So in terms of the quality of your movement, there's always going to be a little adjustment. So imagine, this is an extreme, okay? Your feet are always turned in, right? Instead of being either more straight or more turned out, right? They're turning somehow at some moment. Let's say you're walking and you have one that goes it goes in, and the other one goes straight, right? But somehow you have to turn. So the problem becomes that this foot would always have to do a little adjustment to then create the movement. So that already inconsistently in your body, like your quality of movement, it will already change. That if the position is more correct and more efficiently, right, the energy of where you're going and how you placing yourself is better, right, it will help you. It will make things feel and look easy. So already this versus this, it will create this a better quality of movement because it will look like more like easy. It will feel more fluid, right, and it's more efficient. So that's the imagine from the external thing. You can also think about.
So what you're saying is that making extra adjustments or making extra movements
is not efficient. By consequence, go ahead.
That's what reduces the quality, basically. Yes. That when you have unnecessary things because they're visually disturbing.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, if we would go from the internal part of it, they're not efficient for.
Yeah. They're internally not efficient and they're externally annoying.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So, and then creating extra things in your body that are not really necessary.
It doesn't look clean.
It doesn't look clean, like it doesn't look precise. When people have good quality of movement, also this gets a little tricky because it's a lot of people that over time, right? Let's say they can make the problem or the error of closing the foot. Let's say like they did it for many years. In the beginning, they're not efficient. And after a while, your body's so smart that adjusts to this turning in thing, and then you compensate with something else. That, from the outside, it might look like this is wrong, right? But your turn, let's say, crazy, somehow help you to be able to turn fluidly. It's really rare, but it might happen. Some people that they've been doing things incorrectly with their bodies, they do it so much that at some point your body compensates with something else. In this case, let's say I was showing, if this is my foot, I compensate with my hip, right? Imagine this is my hip. So that and then helping for the problem that I need to do the adjustment. So it might not look perfectly, there is something that is a little off, but somehow it still help you to be able to be efficient, because again, your body will adjust and you'll try to find efficiently. But that's rare, and that requires a lot of years of doing until your body adjusts. It's easier to make it more natural, to be more correct with your body, so then eventually you can be more precise. So on the visual part of it, we can even almost say that it looks more clean. It's like somebody being more precise. My feet are here, and then I just put them there, and there is no like non-adjustment. It's just clean. It's like you can really see the exact movement, and it doesn't require you to do this speed, right? I'm just showing you, so then this kind of means precise, but this is also precise. That is smooth, that you land exactly where you need to land, and there is nothing funny extra in the body that have to do. From the internal part, that also have to do with like, you could look really good from the outside, right? A lot of the times, a lot of people, when they learn from the outside and eventually the in, right? Because we look and we want to imitate something. So sometimes some things, they look good, but that doesn't mean that they feel right. And sometimes some of the feeling have to do from some internal work. We were talking earlier about the walk. If in the walk there is no the internal opposition in the body, you will feel the person, but it almost will feel two-dimensional, not three-dimensional.
Like a piece of paper.
And the three-dimensional thing, it gives you more of a connection, right? So it will make you feel that it's better. So in terms of quality, is a better quality of movement. Maybe let's say you see or don't see it, but you can feel it, right? When you are with that person. Let's say some people, they manage every time, they put their feet perfectly, right? They land at the same time on the music and everything with their partner, but they sit on their hips, right? Some people, they manage to land and sit right at the same time, right? That maybe from the outside we don't see that it's a problem. Imagine if I do landing and then the hip, you will see that extra movement. So for externally, it looks like
it's off.
That is off. But some people, again, like I said before, over time they do it so much that their body adjusts, and then when they go into land, they sit at the same time. So now they're coordinating the incorrect thing, right, with the landing. So it looks like it's correct, but internally it doesn't feel like that, because what ends up happening, that movement, same of the hip in this case, or what I say before about your foot there, it's hard to be efficient from there. So it's going to be a gap of energy and lack of help me?
I don't know.
Lack of energy goes. It's almost like it makes
it feels like like a leak.
Like a leak.
Like there's a hole, like a.
Instead of trying to stay here, keeping that sensation,
you feel it disappear.
It feels like when you land, something disappears, right? It's a little thing, but again, we're so intuitive to really, over time, when you dance with so many people, you end up feeling when somebody just like, sometimes, they haven't eat and their belly makes like, right? some people, yes, you can hear, but some people you just feel it. So imagine with things like that. Imagine
or like if people have like a knee issue, or if they have any kind of strange compensation, you feel it like you feel what they're using and what they're not using. Like you can feel one side of the body is more active, the other side is not. That they understep on one leg, overstep on the other one. That they land behind or ahead of the axis. If they're sinking in their hip, or if they're splicing from their spine.
Over time, like when you, because your job as a dancer is to focus on the other person to try to understand if they're reacting or not to what you're asking or what they're creating. We become super in tune with the other person and everything in their body. Well, at least that's what we should be doing. Like try to pay attention to literally scan the other person to try to understand how they dance, what they need, they don't need, how it feels, so we can match each other's energy and be more connected, right? So the quality on the end, it have to do with that there is less interference of energy, right? And is more efficient. If we think about a sound, right? And to give an example of quality of movement, imagine that Sarah start clapping. Just do any clap, Sarah. And then I try to clap with her, but not together. Right? Let's say we're not in coordination, so by consequence, our quality of sound is horrible. Yes? So now imagine she's going to clap, and I'm going to try to match her perfectly. So clap. Right? So now we're, let's say, more in tune, so our quality is better, right? So imagine this with your body, right? Yeah. The more efficient and the less there is noise and extra things that they are not necessary, right? That they interfere with the movement, the flow of the movement. It will give you, by consequence, a better quality of movement in terms of feeling, and a better quality of movement in terms of how it looks.
And it's, you can tell whether somebody has good movement quality of whether internally, like really internal good movement quality, which appears externally visually, versus just having practiced a lot X movements to make it look coordinated. Yes. By making them change speed, or by seeing how their body acts, doing, let's say, the same movement but at different timings. Yeah. It's really easy to see. People who have good internal movement quality, they will have that same movement quality going very, very slow or going very, very fast. It doesn't matter how fast or how much they change the energy. It will still make sense what they're doing. For people who have just done a lot of repetition and looked at themselves in the mirror a lot and done a lot of form work, like how it looks, when you ask them to change the energy of that movement, it just falls apart. It's pretty clear.
So in general, your internal coordination, it makes sense for the external thing that you see. And sometimes that's why for some people it's like, oh, he moves really organic. There is something organic or something that's normally good quality of movement, on the sense that the internal match the external.
Or that the internal is the driver for the external.
More than anything.
That's that the internal comes first. So whenever we're teaching, especially beginners, we actually don't ever tell them what it should look like necessarily so much as what it should feel like.
Yes.
Because if they're creating the correct energies inside, then it's much easier to, then the shape comes naturally because of the internal work. So we tell them, like, turn out your legs. Those things we tell them, but those are like, that's internal work showed externally. But we never tell them, like,
it should look like this because tango used to be like this on the 50s.
Build up your chest, or, like those kinds of cues that are external, because a lot of the time it doesn't actually help.
No. You might look like you're doing it, but internally it's not happening. Yeah?
Anyway.
Quality of movement.
That's it for us for tonight.
Good quality of time with the doggy now.
Yeah. Now, actually, the doggies
Thank God is sleeping. Both of them.
I think they both had, we took them on a really long walk this morning, and I think it was a little much because they're out. But
no, I think it's good.
That's good. keeping them occupied.
Yeah, so then we can sleep later.
That's why I should make you run around the block every day at least 5 times.
See me smiling? Mm?
I
That's what I used to do to you, remember? Before dancing?
Yeah. I used to be really nervous if I had to dance.
So you have to go run
I
like
had to
crazy.
go run, and then I would like be tired and calm down, like a horsey. I am a horsey in the horoscope. That explains many things.
Here, look.
Anyway, everybody, thank you for paying attention. Thank you for watching.
Baby number 1.
Again, Tango Meet is good. If you guys want to take like an online private, that's good too. And if you want to write questions in the comments, that's good too.
Yeah, follow us on Facebook. Both of us, we post a lot of stuff.
I don't. Ivan does.
Well, I do. And you can follow us also on Instagram.
Ivan.
Me too. So anyway, guys, I hope you are doing well. Again, stay positive with all this idea. There is a reason why all of the things are happening with the virus and all of that. Is we need to take a little reset. The world needs some rest, and we need to rest a little bit somehow and rethink about.
That's one way of thinking about it.
Yes, and rethink about how we continue with things.
Yeah. So maybe we share some plans with you in a couple of months.
Yes. That's why we have a big dog now. That's the hint there.
Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Tell us what you want us to talk about. We're always happy to share our insights.
Yes.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.